Okay, so any questions?
About anything?
About anything related to cappuccino or any presentation that you saw this morning?
Please use the microphone.
Yep.
What's the view of core developers on different languages like Swift being introduced or discussions at some stage about that? Is it something that you're considering? Is it something that you dismiss right away? And why?
Okay, this one. It's a personal advice, so I think I like Swift, but it really has nothing to do with what we do. It's done to make application on desktop and kind of thing like that. So right now, as it is right now, it doesn't work on the web browser. It might at some point, then we'll see. But for now, it's a kind of different usage. So yeah, I like all that new language, like Go and stuff, and very good, different.
But there's no active part in anything at the moment.
I think that Swift has some very interesting properties that are useful for writing better software, and they are things like very very strong type checking with inference. It has good foundational support for optionals, that kind of stuff, and that's great, and that's definitely something we could benefit from. At the same time, I think the main thrust of Swift, if you will, was to improve performance on the desktop. And in those terms, it would not do anything for us. It would not, we wouldn't necessarily be able to gain much out of that. We don't do automatic reference counting or any form of reference counting in Cappuccino, since we are garbage collected in a garbage collected environment. It's not like we could turn it off even if we wanted to. So I think that if you're looking at it, okay, are there features in there that we would like to have? Yeah, sure. In terms of making it easier to detect errors at compile time, yeah, that would be great. But if the main benefit of Swift is speed, which kind of comes from the name, right, that would not necessarily pay off as much for us. So I would say that it's probably, it's definitely something we've thought about, but it's a fairly low priority.
But would there be a risk of Apple moving towards Swift, us staying at?
There's definitely a risk, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if that does happen, then there will be a point where we're going to have to just follow along, because one of the ideas for Cappuccino has always been that it should be easy to take a Mac app and turn it into something on the web. I think a project has something to do.
Remember, sorry to break in, but remember that Objective-C was an extension of C. Basically, they just added some syntax, but it's essentially C. In the same way, Objective-J is an extension of JavaScript. We have to remember that. So Swift is like a fundamentally different language. And we're kind of transpiling Objective-J into JavaScript. So ultimately, since it's running in the browser, it has to run in JavaScript. So unless we have a Swift to JavaScript transpiler, then it doesn't help us. And I think there's a lot of, it's just, right now, it doesn't really give us anything extra that we don't have. Because it's still JavaScript, ultimately.
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm just a bloody user. So my first thing is, thank you. No, really, I mean, absolutely, and from the heart. This is just wonderful. And being only a bloody user, at least I'm exposing 4,000 people every day to, on average, 5 cappuccino programs. So that's something I'm proud of, yeah? And it always says built with cappuccino. But now comes the question, future-proof. How future-proof is it? I mean, it's obvious, so you must have thought about that.
Well, it's only future-proof to the extent that the product survives at all. So obviously, right now, we're looking pretty good because we have some serious, very, very serious users of Cappuccino that probably will not go away. I mean, if you have 1.5 million lines of code written for a major business-to-business application, you're going to keep supporting that for a while. So at least we have that. But there will be, the ball is in your court too, to some extent. We are making the framework better every day, but we also need you guys to reach out and do what you're doing. Show people that we exist. We have built this fantastic tool, and we really need to go out and be put into the hands of other people if we want to have that strong, wide base of support that's really going to ensure everything in the future.
Yeah, how are the statistics? I mean, is the core development team growing, shrinking? Is the user base growing, shrinking?
I can't speak for the user base much, but I can say that the traffic we're receiving on Cappuccino product support is very encouraging. We have very steady flow of users. I think something like 300 or 400 unique visitors every single day, which is substantial for a website, for an open source product, I think.
Yeah, sorry, that's mostly me with my phone.
In terms of the core team, well, this is the core team right now. Some people have, yeah, in Kakao. Some people have come, some people have gone, but I think in general that right now it's filled with people who are actively using Cappuccino for various purposes. So that's also very encouraging, I would say. Please go ahead.
Do we have a timetable for how long we'll be relying on Narwhal for the compiling stuff, or are we? Because I've seen various things about the bright new future,
Right.
but I think I've been seeing those for a little while.
Right. No, it's certainly the goal to get rid of Narwhal. One thing to keep in mind with Narwhal was that it was built at a time when the JavaScript family of products was not as developed as it is today. So if you look at how it was when Cappuccino was originally created, they needed something that would do the job, and the products out there just didn't quite do what they needed. So they went with Narwhal and they created these frameworks. But if you've gone back today and you say, well, how would we do Cappuccino today if we started from scratch? Would we make Narwhal? No, we wouldn't have. And that is also very indicative of where we're going. We will not have Narwhal or those older tools in the long run. We certainly will not have Rhino in there, but not even JavaScript engine. As far as how long that's going to take, that's
That's a question for me.
that's probably
So, I've been working hard with the compiler. I mean, I'm working full time on it now, and hope to for some time now, for the next few months. I mean, I have. The thing is, the Node project for me was not just a matter of just replacing. It's not just a matter of replacing Narwhal with Node, because the whole JavaScript infrastructure, development infrastructure now is so much more advanced than it was when Cappuccino was created. And these guys, the Cappuccino guys from 280 North, they were geniuses because they did a bunch of stuff long before everyone else did, like Narwhal, and they had the native host and things like that. So anyway, the bottom line is for example, our compiler is based on a parser called Acorn. And Acorn has changed dramatically since I even started on this project 2 years ago. Now Acorn has a plugin architecture, so I had to redo our compiler to use the plugin architecture in Acorn. And now the compiler it's almost all working, and it runs on Node, and it runs on Windows, and it runs on Linux. And once I get it fully working, then we have to remove the preprocessor stuff because it just wasn't possible to keep that going forward. I'm thinking at this point, once the compiler is fully working, then we just have to rework the source code not to use preprocessor stuff. And so then the next step will just be to try to replace Narwhal with Node. And also, right now, you can just load Cappuccino source code into the browser, and it's compiled within the browser. In the new architecture, all the compilation happens before you load it. So it'll be, and this is normal now in the JavaScript world. It's like there'll be a file watcher, you save a file, it's compiled, and your project is recompiled, and you don't have to do anything. And it's happened so fast that you don't have to wait. So, and the point of that is by keeping the compiler on your computer and not in the browser, it lets me take advantage of the full range of functionality that Node offers, and you'll get much better error reports, much better. So, like right now, like I was doing some testing, and you know, I had an error, and the error message said, error in line 5394 of unknown. And you know, that's not very helpful. So one of my big goals was to have really good error reporting, and catch more errors than we do now, and catch errors that, you know, catch more errors at compile time rather than waiting for them to happen at runtime. So I'm close, and I know I keep saying that I'm fun, but I am close. And that's really because the compiler's really in the new Node version is kind of the most important piece. So that's why I've really been focusing on that. So yeah, so going forward, once we have everything based on Node, you were asking about the future-proof, Cappuccino being future-proof. That was the other thing, is it's not just a matter of replacing Laravel with Node, it's a matter of getting Cappuccino into the whole world of Node-based tools that we have now, including Cappuccino you'll install with NPM, the Node Package Manager. So, and it will all be modular. And because we'll be able to use the Node Package Manager, that means you can install a certain version of Cappuccino, and you'll know that will work, and then you don't have to worry about your application breaking, right, if a new version of Cappuccino comes out. You can you can more closely control the versions, so you don't have to worry about breaking changes. I hope that answered the question.
I think you were first.
So with Node comes really good server-side support for Objective-C? J, sorry.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Yeah, Objective-J will be able to run on the server. I mean, it does now. You can now.
You can only run it on the
You
server.
can, but it's kind of
Martin
difficult.
did that already.
It's kind of difficult.
The demo you saw earlier today, which Martin presented,
That was a very interesting thing, and I was actually...
it has this, all the server code is written in Objective-J, so there you go. It's definitely possible already. It's just that you have to replace a couple of file operations. It's not easy, but it's definitely doable. Please go ahead.
Do you provide tools in Cappuccino to make a responsive UI?
Well, yes. Although I should prefix that by saying that in the tradition of developing this kind of UI, this kind of Mac-inspired UI, the tradition is that normally you will not necessarily take a huge UI and try to squeeze it into a phone size. The norm is that you will make a separate SIB for that phone device, and then you'll load that on the phone device. It'll still bind to the same model, so you use the same bindings, everything else is the same outlets, but you will custom make that UI for a smaller form factor.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you've ever seen some of those Android apps and you try to run them on a tablet and they look like they're super stretched out and super weird. That's exactly the situation that we kind of don't like, right? So that's why we want to really strongly encourage you to make a specific small form factor instead, and really think about not just, you know, how do I shrink it down, how do I squeeze all the accesses, but think about, can I have all these buttons anymore? Should I simplify? Should I move things into menus? Should I, you know, maybe have even more pages, a storyboard style a UI? Maybe that's what I should do. So really think about it in terms of what is the experience on a small device. But also, to go back to the original question, is it possible? Yeah. All of the stuff we do uses auto-resizing masks, so to the extent that your UI actually makes sense on a small platform, it will definitely reshape, and it will take advantage of that space to the best of the ability of whatever layout you're using. Yeah.
Okay.
But table views won't scroll.
Depends. You can make it work, but yes, today on the mobile device there are scrolling problems. If you have certain scrollable areas and you try to touch them, it won't do what you expect it to, due to our sort of scroll catcher thing. And that's not a hard problem. It's just that it has not been a priority yet. Just like with anything in open source, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and there hasn't yet been, for whatever reason, most Cappuccino apps today are business apps, and they're meant to run on a full desktop. But you know, if after this event you guys go out and you evangelize this thing and everyone starts using it, there will be no doubt that we'll soon have fixed that little scrolling problem. So yes, I admit there are some things there, but they're not insurmountable in any way.
You just port UI kit.
By the,
If you have 10
the
years.
you know, the latest mobile browsers have direct support now for touch scrolling.
Yeah, absolutely. I have run some apps recently on the iPad, for instance, and they're right and fine. It's just that there are some touch events that are not always interpreted properly. So, yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Some simple things on evangelizing. First, I like the monthly updates. Very nice. Go on.
You can thank Alexander.
Yeah. Then I think there is the stuff out there on Cappuccino is a little incoherent, which is of course what happens with open source. But one simple thing, what should I use, Gitter or the Google group? I mean, why are there two interfaces to use, so to speak?
Choice.
Because we are open source.
So it doesn't matter, whichever.
No, I mean, obviously there are different kinds of mediums. With the Google group, that's really a great forum if you have a technical question and the technical answer applies to the broader masses. If you say something in Gitter, it kind of disappears in the noise of general chit chat.
Yep.
You know, even today, if you Google some of those classical Cappuccino issues, I don't know, nothing happens when I send a message to this object. Well, is it nil? You know, you have these things, and you know, you can just Google it, and it'll come up in the Google group. So there are definitely pros and cons for each. But you should be in the Gitter chat too. It's a good place.
I'm looking occasionally in there. Yes.
Yeah.
That's, you know, this is normal in almost any project now. There's multiple forums for communication. So it's unfortunate that Gitter is not searchable, because then, as Alexander was saying, everything we say there gets lost.
Yeah, it does.
So does Gitter have, or do they have some kind of API we could tap into to save all the stuff?
Probably. I'm thinking about the thing. It used to be when we were in IRC, there was this web page that kind of captured everything that we were saying.
Yeah, it wasn't IRC, not from the title.
Yeah, there must be something similar for
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge advantage that one can search the old Google Groups answers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do this always first, and more often than not, I get my question already answered.
Yep.
Yeah, but sometimes if we are on Gitter, we can get a small answer for a very small question right away, which is better than sending, hey, how do I just pick that little thing and putting down the mailing list, which might, you know. I mean, if we are on Gitter and the question we can answer, we'll do that right away. It depends on the actual program.
Someone should look into whether it's possible to log that. Do we have any volunteers? All right.
Thanks.
Gentleman in the back, please look into
Yeah.
how to get Gitter on the web. Yes, please, thank you. Next question, please.
What about better debuggability? Maybe I'm too stupid to get source maps to go, but I would like to see setting a breakpoint in .j files. Is it possible at some
You want to
time?
put a breakpoint in the .j file?
Yes, from within Chrome or whatever browser.
A breakpoint in what?
In a .j file, you set a breakpoint.
Oh, okay. With the new compiler, one of the major goals for the new compiler was to support source maps. So once that's working, then you'll actually be viewing the .j files and setting breakpoints in the .j files in Chrome or in Safari.
That would be great.
The problem with source map is that no browser supports Objective-J. And even though if you use source map, I have it in my backend environment runtime, and so I can use source map there, but the browser doesn't work with them. They will show you the correct line number and everything, but you can't actually get any information from them because it's just a text file. So the browser doesn't know anything about the Objective-J language. So it's kind of useless. Sorry to say, but...
Oh, so you're saying you actually can't set the breakpoints?
No, you can't use it because now in the browser you have all the information about the variables. You can hold the mouse pointer over it, and it will tell you what value it has and so on. But if it's a .j file, the browser does not know anything about it, so it will just be a text file. So in my view, it's useless.
All right. Well,
I can show it to you if you want.
I'll check again, but I could have sworn I did a test and it worked. But I'll check again.
Yeah.
The thing is, even when you're using source maps, if you put a breakpoint, even if let's say the breakpoints work, when you get to the breakpoint, you'll, it actually worked okay, but I'll check again. I thought I had it working. Anyway, but the other thing is the new compiler also put a lot of work into generating very readable code. And so even if you're seeing the transpiled JavaScript, it's a lot easier to debug.
One thing that Cython does, the Python to C compiler, is that it actually puts all the source code in, the original source code, you can use that simple comment next to the compiled code. So in case source maps don't work, you got in a comment. Of course, you remove these in production, but that could be something we could try as well. In the end, I don't know if you'll get your breakpoints, but at least with source maps, you should have an easier time figuring out exactly where did the error happen. And we did, in fact, merge an update now for source map support in the 0.9.9 support release here, and it probably won't be as good as whatever Project is cooking up, but it should help you a little bit.
Okay, I will try it.
Please go ahead.
If you have pre-compiled Objective-J into JavaScript, then you would get error messages that actually point to the actual line of code being evaluated and not evaluated through eval. So you won't get syntax error on line 5000 something while your file is only 19 lines. You'll actually get the error where the error happens, and not where the runtime happens to have created a string that is. Why would you need source maps then if you cannot actually read the generated JavaScript?
If you can read it, that's great. Just read it. It's not always super clear where that code came from, so that's where the source maps kind of come into play. Yes, please go ahead.
I have a question. I think it might have come up in the mailing list recently, but I was too busy to pay attention to it, so I'll ask it anyway. Is it possible, and if so, how, do you run the framework code from source in an app? Can you leave the frameworks as source and still?
You mean the Cappuccino framework?
Well, Cappuccino framework and my own framework.
There is a problem there with the loading system because the Cappuccino frameworks has all these directories and so on, and when you compile it, it will be flattened down to a single directory structure, and it's possible to do. But I remember when I wrote the compiler, I had to do a translation there between the structured file structure to the flattened one. And we could add some stuff there that will make it possible, but it's a lot of work, I guess. So the problem is as soon as you add a file structure and don't have all your .j files in a flattened structure, you have to compile it first before you can run it. So, and that's the way. So if you have, we can either restructure the Cappuccino framework so it's all the files is in one single structure or directory, and that will be possible maybe, but. It's also sad because we have all these CP array folder with all these CP array classes and so on.
We have 3 or 4 Cappuccino applications that all share common code in our framework.
Yeah, but
so if
you have your own framework and you put everything in a flattened structure, you can actually compile the framework too. We do it all the time when we run our project in development mode. So then we compile the frameworks and all of it at low time in the browser.
Okay.
So it works. It just when you have, it depends on your structure of the framework.
So basically, definitely you can use your own frameworks that way, but Cappuccino itself is going to be hard to run as a .j.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask later exactly how to do that, then run my own framework from source, because I presume it's a little bit different, or do I just not compile it?
You just stick it in there, you don't compile it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
Yeah, okay.
It's very simple.
All right, thanks.
That's in fact how, I don't know, most of us probably develop frameworks. We don't really compile it until we're done, because that's an extra step there. It's just bother.
Okay.
I mean, in the end, a framework is just a collection of source codes that you're sort of bringing in. There's nothing more complicated than that. I saw some question over there. Okay, well.
Are there any plans to remove the weird theming system by CSS?
No.
This would solve the scaling problem, for example.
There are no plans. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, but the reason we are avoiding CSS is the same reason we're avoiding HTML. It really locks us down in terms of what we can do and what we can't do. One of the original ideas with Cappuccino was that, you know, in theory you could actually take it and you could replace the whole rendering backend with, I don't know, a canvas. Or you could spit out a number of spans that have pixels in them. I don't know. You could have a different rendering backend that put out the actual app in any way you like. And that's the power of abstraction. You have these layers. But as soon as you start going into CSS, well, if the theme is described in terms of CSS, then Cappuccino doesn't understand it anymore. It doesn't actually know what your CSS does. And we lose a lot of power because now we don't actually know what we're doing on the screen. We just know that the browser is going to do something when we put the CSS in there. Unless we put in a full CSS parser in there, and actually a browser too, because that's the complexity involved with understanding CSS, not just parsing the code itself, but actually how does it apply? How does it cascade on the HTML itself? It's a very complex problem, so you really lose a little bit by doing that.
So what I would appreciate is a better scalability of the app, that you can zoom in or zoom out. And the other thing is that it loads faster.
Well, you also have flat themes.
Okay.
If you like it to load fast. I mean, there's nothing that prevents you from using CSS. Some classes do. I mean, in LPKit, for instance, a couple of those classes came with a bunch of little CSS, particularly animations and so on. I just attach it directly to the DOM events, and again, it's outside of Cappuccino's control and outside of Cappuccino's understanding. So that's a weakness with that method, but it is definitely doable. So in theory, you could do it. Sounded like a project had something to add?
Well, Alexander, didn't you, I thought you added the ability to, didn't you add the ability to put CSS into a theme?
I didn't. I think I've been of this opinion for a while.
Okay, well, the thing is, I mean, personally, I don't see why we can't offer the ability to, within a theme definition, to define parts of the theme using CSS. I mean, if you just want to get a border around something, it seems like if you know that's what you want to do, you just want to do it quickly. You know, the abstraction is wonderful, but here we are, how many years later? 1993, I think the first browser came out, so we're now 20 years later, and HTML and CSS have not gone away. And I don't see any sign of them going away. They're just getting more powerful. So I don't want to totally disagree with Alexander, but realistically, it doesn't seem like any other rendering engine in the browser is going to come forward anytime soon. So
I don't disagree with that. I think that obviously,
you know, I don't see any harm in us supporting it as long as people know that's what they want to do. And you know, as you're saying with the scaling, it definitely will help with things like that.
yeah, I don't disagree with the idea that you could definitely have a small system there, which is optional, that you could use yourself to put some CSS on there, with the understanding that you are theming something you don't necessarily know what it's going to look like in terms of the DOM structure. We might decide tomorrow that, well, token field is better built out of 5 divs than 4 divs, and then your CSS might break. But as long as you're okay with that, small bit of glue code that allows you to attach a little bit of CSS, I guess I agree with that project, there's not a terrible amount of harm in that. As you said, I don't want that to be the main way that Cappuccino is themed, because it does tie us down a little bit in terms of, and it also entangles us with CSS. That is something that we've been trying really hard to avoid, because CSS is honestly not a great language for design. Yes, please.
I think it's fairly easily possible for any CP view to get the, I think it was underscore DOM node.
Yeah.
And you can inject whatever you want JavaScript wise. You can basically set attribute class.
Which is precisely what some.
And then you could fairly easily just include
You can
any
even
CSS
create
file.
a category on the CP view to set the CSS value to whatever you want.
Exactly.
That's what we do for the border, because we are not theming that, or we are not using a CP process to make around the core. But we have our own categories to do that.
That's certainly possible, and it has been done. They are doing it. It's done 5 years ago, and not 5 years, maybe 4 years ago in LT Kit and so on. So definitely, yeah, you can. You have access.
I know you can. I was adding it to the discussion because it's how I did it for something that ended up not working with CodeMirror.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we discussed, I know we discussed briefly actually officially exposing the DOM element, you know, with the understanding that it might change in the future. And the way, as Alexander was saying, the way that the controls are structured with the DOM elements may change in the future, but for those who want to get into the low level, at least you'll have the ability officially.
I like the Python ethos that we're all consenting adults here. If you want to get in and get dirty under the hood, do it. Fine. I mean, it's your responsibility. It's also your prerogative. We're not going to try to stop you, and it's certainly there if you need it. Any other questions for us to discuss today? Yes, please.
What I would like to see also is some kind of release plan on the website, so that everyone can see what's in the next version. So if there's a 0910 or 1.0, what we can we expect with that version, and when will the version roundabout be available?
I would love to put that. Fortunately, we don't know ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. That assumes we actually know what's coming next.
Well, we know there was the CP text view from Daniel. There was the core animation from Kakao Dev. That I think that are the biggest thing that we are going to merge in the master pretty soon. But the full list depends on the.
It's kind of hard. I mean, maybe to our one guy that we don't know is going to push something, or like, okay, let's put it.
It doesn't need to be a very full list, but just some really core edges, like the text system or the animation stuff, that it is written somewhere, that the users which are visiting the website can see what is coming up and have a rough horizon when it's coming.
Yeah.
Roadmap.
Yeah, so like Antoine said, the roadmap currently is pretty much that. We are gonna try to bring in CP text view next, and we'll look at core animation, and then that might, provided that I brought it, gets no done, that might actually bring us to the 1.0.
I think there's also auto layout pending, isn't it?
Yes,
From
but
Kakao Dev.
yeah, but from what I heard, he was not pleased with it, and I don't know if he's actively working on it. He's an on and off developer. Sometimes he comes in and he develops a ton of code and we get it, and then sometimes he takes a holiday. So we don't know exactly when that's going to be done. Auto layout would be great, but I don't consider that necessarily a 1.0.
But I think he said he's finished.
Yeah. I discussed with him and it's not finished.
Okay.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
He has problem on some parts. I tried to help him, but it's not yet finished. About 70%.
Which is pretty good.
I mean, remember the problems that auto layout was actually designed to solve. Auto layout, I think, was primarily designed to solve problems with changing, like on an iPad, when you're changing from landscape to portrait mode, then suddenly your layout might want to totally change. Or if you're dealing with internationalization, where you have to deal with, what's going to happen when the text gets shorter or longer. And I think for the class of applications that Cappuccino is designed for, this is not as big of an issue as it is for the kind of applications that auto layout was designed for. I mean, it would be great to have, but also auto layout is can be a real bear, really difficult to figure out sometimes, and to actually get things to work the way you want.
You're basically solving an equation system every time you're trying to calculate what goes where.
Yeah.
But what project says too also that there is a significant use for localization. And with 0.9.9 today, we are releasing better localization support, which will probably make auto layout a little more desirable. Nonetheless, it is a very complex feature, and localization has worked for years without it, so it will continue to work. It would be great if we had it, but it's not. I don't consider it a 1.0 blocker, and I don't think the rest of the team does either.
It's nice to have.
It's a nice to have, yeah.
I'm curious, I have a question. I'm curious, those who are actually using Cappuccino now, what are you using it for? What kind of applications? In-house, public-facing, or?
From my point, we build an in-house application primarily, with part of that disclosed to, including the Cappuccino part, disclosed to customers. So semi-trained, different browsers, but we can more or less guarantee that all the fancy features are going to be in-house, so we got control over the environment. But we do rely on the public bit working cross-platform, pretty much consistently the same.
I have an application working with small businesses, running management systems and CRM with totally untrained people using it. and I've told them they can only use Chrome, and that's how I'm managing the difficulty and variation on things. But that's very much customer facing, and it's proved very educational on how much testing you need to do before you hand it over to a 17-year-old girl who's running a playgroup.
But there was actually an initiative in the past to showcase the Cappuccino applications, and I actually sent some screenshots. Wouldn't it be nice to reactivate this and put all these applications online?
You're absolutely right, and what we are going to do, and I was going to announce this in the closing speech, is that we are going to have a new round of fresh applications for the website, make sure that's up to date, because it is, to be honest, a little bit sad that today the main applications we have on cappuccinoproject.org are all dead. They are GitHub issues, they are my old app from 5 years ago, and none of them are actually production apps. So what we would like to do is to say, to ask the community to provide us with screenshots and their best takes on their apps and make that live, and just show the world that, hey, people are using this product and they're using it in production environments.
Well, as I said, I have 85 tiny cappuccino applications which are for the world and actually used every day, yeah, surprisingly.
We can put a link. But not the
Yeah, we don't need all 85, just pick your best.
At Audition we have 3 cappuccino applications. 2 of them are in-house. One is an LDAP management solution for managing our LDAP directory, and one is a virtual machine allocation system and de-allocation system for testers and developers. And the third application is customer facing. It is a license and managing application for our software.
There's a theme here that a lot of people use Cappuccino mostly for in-house or business-to-business purposes, where they can tightly control the environment, make sure everyone is running the right browser, make sure everyone has the proper training. I'm wondering if we can change that over time. It would be lovely to see a couple of more public-facing applications.
And Cappuccino is great for those enterprise-level applications.
It is, yeah.
Therefore, it is used a lot in-house,
Yep.
which is infamous for the public.
Yep.
Well, it could be at some point if we had this native host stuff to run the Cappuccino application on the browser. Native host is a bit old, but we could actually make some application like actually Twitter and Slack. Everybody is doing Electron, something like that. Actually, it's working fine. So take that faster. You can have an application that's online. You can also provide the desktop experience from as an app. That would, I think, help to get more standard.
That would be great. Whenever I use one of those chat apps, I think, oh, wouldn't it be nice if it did this or that, or had a nice split view that actually worked?
If you work very well, just put the stuff in Electron's working. You just need to do the binding and the menus. And yeah, that's something we could do.
Yep. Anyone else? Yes, please.
I've seen a lot of questions on the mailing list about installation problems. And it's hard to install everything and get it right on different machines, different operating systems and so on. Is there any priority in fixing that?
It's difficult to prioritize that when a project is replacing the whole system anyhow. You might say that if we put too much effort into that, well, it won't even exist anymore once we have a simple npm install command. So
we have to live with it.
You might have to live with it,
Yeah.
but
You have to live with it, yeah, for now.
Yeah.
And then once we're running on Node, then that will go away.
Well, you
Just
could
the npm install
Running on
Cappuccino.
Node, it
period.
seems very far away because I have a list here what has to be done, and it's a long list.
One could at least add a comment, ignore the warnings. Ignore it if it's red text, yeah? It doesn't mean it works anyway.
Yeah, or Dockerize it.
we're working on that, yeah.
I tried, and we have some issue with Rhino. Again,
Yeah,
it's the
Rhino
same
is-
problem as usual. So, but you might have a clue.
I have a clue on that. We might get a Docker
Because that
container.
was actually my point, that today I want to release a base Cappuccino we made with an Nginx server and Cappuccino release install, so we just have to a container using that base image and everything should be ready.
Well, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Docker Hub could build it for us and it would just be ready to go. Yeah. I think also CapN might help you a little bit because at least you won't have to, you know, if you're switching releases, you don't have to do Jake Clobber and Jake Install again just to go from Master of Cappuccino to 0.9.8 or whatever you have for a different product. So at least you can easily switch between different installs of Cappuccino, and that will
Honestly,
cut down a little bit on Jake installs.
Right now, I don't even have Cappuccino installed on my user local normal. It's always Megami for the particular project. So it's very easy to do because it's installed everything you need to have in one folder. So you can get rid of it with one command. And you don't have to run jclover and don't exactly know what's going on.
Yeah. All right, so let me bring up one of the questions that came up earlier today that we were asked to talk about during this panel, and that is the possibility of bounties on paid bounties on bugs. You know, where you basically have a fund, people pay into it, say, hey, if you guys fix this bug, we'll pay you guys whatever. You basically pay support or pay development. What do we think about that?
I think it's a good idea. Yeah. I'm all for it.
Yeah. Might find the money somewhere, but
some people have told me here today that sometimes there is more money than there is time, and they would rather just throw some money on the problem and see it go away than to necessarily try to solve it.
why not?
Let me explain from a user point of view, at least my point of view. It's not just to get a feature released, it's also the confidence from my employers to go with Cappuccino because they know when the shit is around, there's someone to call, write a check out and we'll fix it. Whereas at the moment, the biggest worry of them is that it is an open source project, it's still in the ODOT version stage, with a limited number of active users and core developers. Shall we put a lot of effort in that? Or shall we go with the common, obvious answers that are mainstream, that do half of it, but at least we know we can call someone?
That's gonna change.
And if we can take that worry away by saying, okay, you may pay for it, but at least there's someone to call and it will be fixed, that'll definitely help.
As a classic, no one has ever been fired for buying IBM argument, right? You want to have a big company behind it, something that you can trust a little bit. Fear factor involved in going with unknown.
I failed to convince others before, several times actually. Smaller projects, fair enough, but because of that lack of understanding and lack of belief in it, because of the size.
Well, let me turn the question around back to you guys. If there were such a system, how would you like it to work? The one example that I think of, like I mentioned during the initial presentation, is that I think the way Fabricated does it, now the big open source project, they do, they came out of Facebook and they make a kind of a code review system. And their philosophy is simply that you tell us what your problem is, we'll tell you roughly how much it would cost to get it done. We don't write any contracts, because if we start writing contracts and negotiating, then we will spend too much time on it. It's not going to be worth our time. We're very busy people. But if you're cool with the number, you make the payment, we'll make the best effort. That's the understanding. It's an understanding between gentlemen that we'll make our best effort to make that happen in the time frame we set. You know, that's one model.
That'll work fine for feature requests that do not exist yet, but I think from a support request it might not. Something that has always worked but is broken with the latest update, or something that spontaneously stopped working, is something that there's a pressure, there's an expectation that it needs to be resolved. It used to work, why has it stopped? That kind of argument. So from a feature request point of view, I totally understand the previous model, but from a support point of view, I don't think that will work, personally.
I'm wondering if for critical support issues, you would probably be not best served by a loose conglomerate of volunteers, because in the end, even if you put some money on the table, well, someone has to step away from their day job to do it, and we never know. You know, if you had instead a company, a Cappuccino focused company, and you know there used to be one at least, And you kind of bring them on retainer, say, you know, you guys, if I ever need you, I want to be able to call you up in the middle of the night and you fix this.
It does not necessarily be,
If there was such a company, I think that would fit your particular critical bug
I've been looking
situation
for
best.
a while.
You should start such a company.
But that's exactly it. The lack of experience and availability with ad hoc people around on the internet, at least that I can find, is not sufficient. That one basically turns to you guys, okay, well, can the community
A bit about catch-22, isn't it? Because there will not be such a company unless Cappuccino grows to a significant size.
Yeah.
And this is the eternal problem with open source software. The thing is, you know, open source software, no software is free. Open source software is not free. Someone's paying for it, and either the developer or the user. The developer is paying with their time, or the user is paying with money. So, and the thing is, you know, these guys who wrote Cappuccino in the first place, they had millions of dollars of investment funding.
Yep.
And so, you know, all the open source projects that are out there that are really successful, they have corporate backing. And this is kind of our problem in a sense, is money. Because money is time, time is money. And it's, you know, we're doing and thank God for Nuage Networks. You know, that they've essentially funded a tremendous amount of Cappuccino development through the work that Antoine and Alexandre and the others have done. So, but going forward, we've discussed this, and this is kind of it's kind of an issue we have to figure out somehow, is how to have, if we want to have steady, really steady support for Cappuccino going forward, ultimately we can't rely on volunteers. It just never works long term. So there has to be, because yeah, we all have day jobs, and we're all very busy. And you guys who are using Cappuccino for your businesses, you're getting paid to do that. And so, and actually, it's got kind of the whole world is waking up to the fact that, well, we actually need to start supporting open source software if it's critical to our businesses. You know, there was the whole thing with OpenSSH, where there were these critical bugs in OpenSSH, and no one was funding them. And yet the whole world was depending on it. OpenSSL, sorry.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think this is something that perhaps should be discussed at some point, is how we can create some pool of funding for development. Because it's, you know, it's hard to, I mean, I'm just like now working full-time on Cappuccino, not getting paid, because I enjoy doing it, but I can't do that forever.
I think probably in the long run, there will be some new Cappuccino company, because that's normally what happens for big open source projects. All the successful ones anyhow, they usually end up with something happening. It's just, it's not here right now, and I can't make any promises, but I wouldn't be surprised if we, as long as we keep pushing forward, as long as we keep making amazing releases like this one, there will be some day when this will actually be a viable business again.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we're running out of time. So I think it's time to have a drink. Oh, it's weird. So motivated to get a drink. So
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your questions, and I hope that some of your answers helped. Thank you, Brada, for joining from abroad.
Thank you.
Too bad you can't join us for the party. We were trying to bring a projector, but it's rather large.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Great. And thank you, VDA, for organizing everything.
Okay, so next step. is to go to party. Of
The next
course.
step is that.
Closing talk.
Closing.
Oh, excuse me, closing talk. After the closing talk, don't forget the bag with presents from Oops and from university also. So don't forget to take it. And I leave talk to Alexander.
All right, so I know that we're all forward getting to the party, so I will be brief. Cappuccino 0.9.9 will be available today. Before you upgrade, just a quick note on that. There is one backwards incompatible change in Cappuccino 0.9.9, and that is the CP tracking area. So what happened before is that every view got every event in terms of mouse movements, which was not very good for performance. With CP tracking area, you do need to create a CP tracking area to receive those tracking events. So you can easily upgrade your software. All you need to do is to add a CP tracking area. You can actually make it as large as your whole view, and you can make it auto scale to that view, and that will pretty much get you back to where you started. In the long run, you should try to be more specific than that. You should try to minimize the size of your tracking areas in order to maximize performance.
Quick question about that. If you don't have mouse up or mouse down in your code, are you okay not?
If you don't have mouse entered or mouse exit, you're fine. Feel free to use CapN as you're making this upgrade, because that's going to be an easy way for you. If you have multiple projects, you can keep one project going on 0.9.8. Make sure that keeps working while you work on the next product and upgrade it to 0.9.9. It'll save you a little bit of effort there. You don't have to do it all at once. So the next question is, what is next? What we need to do is, just like we discussed here in the panel, and like I said during the opening speech, is we need to get this product out there. To begin with, I want to underline one thing that comes up a lot with Cappuccino and might be a barrier to entry for some people. Cappuccino is not a Mac product. It's based on Mac technology, but it's not a Mac product. You don't need a Mac to use it. You don't need Xcode cap. You don't need any of that. It's helpful if you have it, but you certainly don't need it. Cappuccino is a foundation. And if you're going to write an application on the web, you are going to want a foundation. If you're just writing, the next Wikipedia, you don't need Cappuccino. But if you write anything at all that moves and has complex user interactions, complex drawings on the screen, tables, drag and drop, all these things, you are going to want to have a solid foundation to build upon. And I think we've really seen that today during these presentations. Antoine showed you that when they got the basics out of the way, they were able to, at Knowledge Networks, really step it up in terms of their application itself. Only 3 people have in 4 years written an application that would be amazing, even on the desktop, with a desktop class system. They did that because they could get focused on just the app functionality. They could get all the little stuff out of the way. They didn't have to reinvent drawing for different browsers. They didn't have to reinvent drag and drop for first responder technology. In fact, today you saw Martin's app, which he demonstrated, and he didn't have any code in it, not until the very end. That is the power of a solid foundation. You get so many things for free that it frees you. Tim Howell showed us the real-life benefits you can get out of having drag and drop pervasively. His app is based around drag and drop. You can grab those little pictures, you can put them into your tables, and things happen. You can rearrange your invoices. He used menus wherever he needed them. He used a data control, simple stuff like that. I challenge you to find apps written by a single person with that level of sophistication on the web today. In fact, take a couple of those billion-dollar apps
and you won't find the level of sophistication that Tim Howell put into his spare time project. Let's take a little poll here. When you guys sit down to write a desktop application, do you break out your favorite assembler? And do you start to write into the frame buffer to draw buttons? How many do that? Don't see many hands here. So I ask you, should you do that on the web? Should you write in the assembly of the web, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Or should you just get on with it and get a proper foundation for your app? The bottom line is, if you use Cappuccino, you will have more time to spend on what actually matters in your app. You can punch above your weight. Save your time, just write a better app. So the question is, how will we continue to get there? Obviously, we already have a great product today. We have a good foundation that is being used in production by real companies with real customers. But if we are to continue to grow, we can't just rest on our laurels and say, hey, good job guys, let's go home. We need to continue to grow our user base. The more people use Cappuccino, the more powerful we can make the foundations, the more we can take care of the little details, because the benefits are not just little details anymore when they're applied to 100 users, 1,000 users, to 10,000 users. As we go from the 0.9.9 release, we should not only be thinking about what should be in 1.0 on a technical level, we should be thinking about how to make Objective-J less scary, how to bring in newcomers, how to eliminate that fear factor that is present today. In the core team, we have some ideas. We are going to do some things. We're going to take a look at our website. We're going to see if we can get a couple of fresh apps up there. We have some other ideas for how we can give everyone a gentle push into Objective-J, make people realize that it's not such a beast as it looks. But we'll need your help too. We have built something great. We just need to get it out there. So, I ask you all, tell people about Cappuccino. See where you can use it. See if you can dispel some of that fear. Tell people to use a solid foundation the next time they build an app. Thank you.